My name is Gogo, and today my guest is Will Grimes. He's actually a personal friend of mine, but he is big in real estate. He's top 1%, came over from Berkshire Hathaway to EXP. He was raised by an Olympic champion mom, an entrepreneur dad. He is a former Marine Corps Special Ops agent, and I am so excited that he's our guest today. We can learn a lot from him. How do you go from special ops into real estate and become a top producer? So listen in.
Welcome to Gogopreneur, where Gogo Bethke, your host, interviews badass rock star entrepreneurs of the world, figuring out who they are, how they got to where they're at, and the lessons they learned along the way so you can learn those lessons and turn it into money. Let's go get 'em.
And the one and only Will Grimes for the very first episode of Gogopreneur. I'm so
Excited. Hey,
I
we've
am
been
so
we've been friends for a while now, right? And I remember when I first came over to EXP, we had a great conversation. We got some great tips from your course, and just got some things like different perspective wise as far as what we were doing in addition to what we could be doing. Always helpful, always a great time. You've been at my birthday dinner. You supported me with speaking. We've shared a stage in front of like 7,000 together. Couldn't be more happy to just come hang out with you. And yeah, I'm so glad I'm on the episode. And episode one, it's gonna go great or it's not gonna go great. So you're either gonna have a lot of work to do, or we're gonna do all right and set the standard pretty good.
I think we're gonna set the standard pretty freaking high. I'm going to have to match this every time.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for being here. I just think you have such an amazing story, and I would love the world to get to know you. So the idea of it with the Gogopreneur show is to interview people who have achieved something, and but to also understand where they came from, what they went through to get to where they at. And I just think you have such an amazing story. So I would like to take you back all the way to your childhood. The fact that your mom is an Olympic champion and your dad is an entrepreneur, I think you had a pretty good start. So why don't you lay
Yeah.
the foundation for everyone to understand who is Will from childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. Grew up in Colorado and still in Colorado. Mom's a three-time Olympian. She never medaled. She was never a champion, but champion in the sense of like you're an Olympian, right?
Yeah.
Which is an accomplishment in itself. We grew up a little bit less fortunate. My dad, super smart. He was in electronics and aerospace or whatever he was doing after the Marine Corps. And I'm not sure if most people are aware of this, but a spaceship from NASA or whatever blew up on live television in the 80s. So when my dad was working in that industry, and then that happens, that industry kind of goes away for a while. So my dad got laid off as a young kid and had to just learn how to make pivots and figure out what he was going to do. And the tech world, and I was born in '84, right? So the tech world back in the early '80s is not the tech world that it is today. I mean, there just wasn't work unless you were doing that type of work for those companies. And so I had an educated, loving father. I had an educated, loving mother, but we just didn't have much, right? I was the kid that had a basketball but no hoop. I had to just kind of, and I was the youngest of all girls, so I'd be dribbling a basketball. But I tell you what, though, like when my sisters were in school, and I'm at home, my mom had to pick up a job to help support the family when my dad was trying to create his own company. So she was a security guard at a mortuary. I mean, you talk about just a lady being kick ass and just being game to do whatever it takes
Hey,
to
whatever it takes to keep those kids, right? Like, sure, I'll be a bodyguard, a security guard, right?
whatever it takes, whatever it takes. But so the thing is, she'd be sleeping on the couch during the day while my dad was working, but I wasn't even in kindergarten yet, right? Like I was born in October, so I didn't start kindergarten because of the deadline until I was 6. So I was 4 or 5 years old. 4 or 5 year olds running around. She'd be sleeping on the couch during the day before she'd work at night.
With one eye
So
open, make sure you're alive, huh?
that's it. But so I was just by myself. So I come from like a long line of just talking to myself and imagining and visualizing with a basketball and making the game winning shot and all that stuff. Cause I didn't have, my sisters were in school. My mom was sleeping. I just kind of had me. So I had to figure that out.
That's awesome. So how did you get through? So you get through childhood, go to high school, all that
Mhm.
in Colorado?
All in Colorado. Received a Gatorade Player of the Year award. Was a dual sport athlete. Played great at baseball. Did about 5 minutes of professional baseball, and it was just short lived. Like when I got into that, I always bring it up not so I can clout or gloat about my 3 minute career in professional baseball. It's so I can articulate that I wasn't ready for the business of that and what to expect and how to go about it. And a lot of people didn't even know I had that opportunity in the first place. I know my mom knew, That was about it, and I had a buddy pass away in Iraq on his first deployment. And I remember running with him in high school, like the summer before I was going to go off and play junior college, and he was going to go to the Marine Corps. We ran and worked out together in high school, and after we graduated a little bit before he went to boot camp, and I just remember him being so excited to go and being a part of something bigger than himself. And his brother was already a Marine, and so when I get to a certain level that I'm not ready for, and that level is not very team oriented. It's just everybody's trying to get to the next level. It's just more of a business, and I lasted 3 minutes, and I wasn't ready for that. But here's the thing, though. I left way too early. Mentally, I wasn't prepared for that. Something got hard. I was a kid. I'm left-handed, and I threw the ball 91 out of high school. Talent. It was never hard for me. But then it got hard because when you get to that level, everybody's good. But it's also a business, and I had no idea what to expect. And I cut it short. And it's a great lesson because then when I decided to go to the Marine Corps, I didn't know how to swim. I'd never shot a rifle until boot camp. My mom was a hippie, but the one thing I did have in my mind though was I'm never going to quit or cut myself short again because baseball was my love, and hey, that's the reality. And I'm not saying I'd have been a Hall of Famer or something weird. It's not about how far I would have gone. It's about that mentally I allowed myself to cut short. It's not about how far you would have gone. It's that you allowed something to creep in and maybe cut you short on something you could have tried harder. So it's great context and perspective for my kids and for myself that, okay, now it's about the effort. And in the Marine Corps, that's where I really learned an actual work ethic. That's where I learned how bad you could be at something, how hard you can work, and then how accomplished you can get. So, never swimming, never shooting a rifle till boot camp. I don't know if you want those stories. They're pretty comical.
I want all of those stories, but I want to back it up though. How did you? So I guess the lesson from the baseball story was not to ever give up, especially when things get hard, because that's what forms you, right? Well, you did, and you moved on with that story. How did you end up in the Marine Corps?
When I was looking for something else outside of baseball, the only reference I had was a good buddy of mine that was so happy to be a part of that. And my dad was a Marine during Vietnam era. I had a grandfather that fought World War II, Silver Stars, Bronze Stars. My mother's uncle fought in Iwo Jima. He was a pilot. He flew over Iwo Jima, and he got Airman Medal. So I had it in the family, but it was never preached to me. Like one thing I love about my parents is that they just let me be me. So my dad was never trying to make me a Marine. Matter of fact, when I came home from baseball and I'm selling cars and trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do, he was actually kind of talking me out of it. I started asking him all these military questions and Marine questions, and he's like, one night he was like, "Hey, are you wanting to go?" And I'm getting to your answer here, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. Like, I just, I knew, like, internally I was searching to be a part of something,
Yeah.
and I was always a part of baseball in that team aspect. But all of a sudden, what I was married to no longer woke up and on the other side of the bed like it used to look. So what I was married to no longer fit me in that moment. But I didn't know how to be an individual. I didn't know how to be a businessman. I was still yearning for culture and for something, and I started asking, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm thinking about it." He's like, "All right, well, you got the Air Force, you got the Navy, you got Coast Guard. Here's what they're great at." He was not even mentioning the Marine Corps. And I go to the Marine Corps recruiter. I test out. I test really high downtown. So I bring it home, and I keep asking about the Marine Corps, and it kind of bothered me because he kept like, "No, look, like these guys, And I finally had to ask him, like, because I felt like my own father's like, "You don't believe in me? Like, you were a Marine. Like, you don't think I could do it? You don't believe in who I am?" Or I started asking him about it. He's like, "Well, all your questions pertain to college and pertain to like different types of jobs." And he's like, "Will, you go to the Marine Corps to be a Marine." And I just haven't heard that from you. I've heard college, I've heard opportunity, I've heard, job type. He's like, "I've heard all these other things, which are great. And it's not that the Marine Corps doesn't offer those things, but the Marine Corps is different. You're a Marine first. Everything else comes secondary. So you want to, go to college while you're a Marine. It's possible." And now you got to remember, this is end of 04, 05. So the war is at the height. So it's like, yeah, maybe, but you're a Marine first. So whatever the Marine Corps needs from you, they're going to get from you. And if there happens to be other time to do things cool, some of the other branches would just recruit you and incentivize you by showing college and certain things first. The Marine Corps was always, the few, the proud, the Marines, and when he said that, I was like, oh, that's what I needed to hear right there. So I show him my test scores, and I test really high, surprisingly. And I was qualified for a lot of stuff. But once he said you go to the Marine Corps to be a Marine, I was like, cool, I'm going to be a Marine. I ain't working on no helicopter. In my perception, all Marines are great.
Yeah.
I want to go to the infantry. And when my dad heard that, he's just like, oh, God, like, you want to run up and down these hills screaming "oorah" and carrying your damn rifle, and it was more idealistic in the sense of I had something to prove to myself. I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself, and it was like, because of cutting baseball short, it was like, if I'm going to do this,
I'm going to be a best.
In my mind, I'm not going to be half a Marine, and there's no such thing as that. But in my mind, from the posters I grew up with and being around my dad, like a Marine's Marine was Marine infantryman from my lens. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, right? And bless my dad's heart, my mom's heart, because my mom being an athlete, I just left an opportunity 3 minutes into it to tell her I'm going to go to the Marine Corps during the height of the war. And my mom, and she passed away last year, bless her heart, she never once tried to talk me out of it. It was always just, where are your thoughts coming from? How are you structuring it? Are you sure? And just helping me with my process. And then just nothing but support. And like, you got a son going to the Marine Corps, and it's, during that time, it's like, I'm not that good of a parent. I'll choke my kid, throw him in the basement, and lock him away. I don't do it.
I always think about it. I never truly thought about what I did to my parents and how far I moved until I had my child, right? And the fact that my children, they don't really speak Hungarian. My parents don't speak English, right? So they don't get to see their grandchildren maybe once every 2 years. And when they do see them, they don't get to speak with them, right? So I never thought about what I actually did to my parents. And I think as younger children or younger adults, we're selfish. We don't really know anything but me, right?
But the opportunity. Like, I guarantee you, your parents understood the opportunity you were creating for your future and your future family's future. And they know that. And that's why they support, even though they're getting less time. And it could be pain, like they get it. They get it, and that's exactly what we're supposed to do.
What I wanted to say with that is that I don't know if I can be as supportive and give as much freedom as my parents gave me to my children, right? Because I'm selfish. I don't want my child to live on another continent. I want them to live near me. I don't want my grandchildren on another continent. I want them to live near me, right? So I think my parents love me more than I love mine. Just kidding.
I think parents also know, because I've got three kids, and I know which kid I have a little influence with, and I know which kid is going to be who the heck he is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you're going to be who you are. So I'm not going to try to change your mind. I'm just going to try to help you with whatever BS you're trying to pull off, because you're a lot like your daddy. So like, I think my mom knew deep down, like, you ain't changing my mind. So if you can't, then be supportive. So I'm as most prepared as I can be, while going into that. But really the reason why I chose it was the next familiar thing. I didn't want a corporate job. I didn't want certain things. I was yearning for culture and challenge, and I wanted to test myself, and I had cut something short. So I'm looking for the next challenge to not cut myself short and to really prove myself. So not knowing how to swim or ever shooting a rifle, I was high shooter out of boot camp. I was the lead counter sniper instructor for division schools at the end of my career. So, humbly, there's some things to say. I went from nothing to a very proficient tactical shooter. So there's some accomplishments there, from no experience, and no raw talent per se, to being accomplished. And that lesson in itself is what's most important, was learning how hard you can actually work, and then learning, just to believe in yourself, and just the patience and the time you need to give to a process without the expectation that you're supposed to be great at it yet. Right?
So what are some of those lessons that you learned in the Marine Corps that you took into your entrepreneurial life today?
So when I was shooting, I remember we got to the range and I was super nervous. And in boot camp, when you get to the rifle range, it's like phase 2. You're about a month and a half into boot camp out of 3.5 months. And they're a little bit nicer to you because you have a loaded gun, right? So they don't, like, the drill instructors don't want you to shoot them or anybody else. And I remember sitting on this ammo can. I was getting ready, like we had already practiced positions and sitting with our weapons with no rounds in it, no bullets, for the first week. You're just practicing positions, you're practicing trigger pull. The second week, you're actually starting to shoot on the range. And I hadn't shot yet, but it was getting ready to be my turn. And I was just nervous. And drill instructor Sergeant Graham came up to me and he's like, hey, what the F's wrong with you? I'll keep my language appropriate today.
Oh no, you can. I'm assuming they can beep it out, right, guys?
Sure. Yeah. And I'll
Because
try
it
to
is.
edit it, but you guys get the point. He looks up to me like, hey, what the F is wrong with you? And I'm like, you have to speak in third person in boot camp. So I'm stumbling over my words. I'm saying, this recruit's nervous because this, he finally was like, hey, shut up, just talk to me. And I was like, sir, I've never shot before. And he's like, what's the problem? And I'm like, well, all these other guys, like, I hear him talking to squad bay. These guys grew up hunting with their dad. This guy's been shooting. He kneels down to me and he goes, Grimes, listen to me. You have no bad habits. Do what I say, when I say, how I say, to the best of your ability. You're going to effing crush. I love guys like you. And he just walks off. Right. And then in a moment, I have this paradigm shift and all of a sudden I had the advantage because all these kids potentially learn how to shoot the wrong way. So they got to unlearn just to then learn from these actual professional gunmen. So what was important there for entrepreneurship is, one, it's okay to be new. Right. And when you're new, you've got no bad habits. There's actually an advantage there. But then secondly, your circle and who you place yourself around when you are new is so important, because what you're going to learn in those moments, if you're committed to working so hard, you can go down the wrong path real hard, or you can go down the right path real hard. And when I listened to everything those guys had me apply, they were the right circle. They were the best of the best. These were professional gunmen. Well, I was high shooter out of the entire, not just my company, but the entire battalion. Out of 500 dudes or 300 dudes, I was high shooter. And it was like, it allowed me to just embrace something that's new, right? Because baseball, I hadn't been new to baseball since I was 8 years old. And I was always good at it. I practiced hard. I was a good kid. I was a good player, good athlete, good teammate, coachable. But I didn't go put in the extra mile. I practiced when it was practice. And when we weren't at practice, I was hanging out with my girlfriend. I wasn't working out extra hours. I was eating Taco Bell. I wasn't Kobe Bryant about it, right? But all of a sudden, when I put a certain level of work and proficiency into something, that's where I started learning the work ethic behind it. But I embraced it. So when I get to real estate, it was like, hey, I'm good to be new, but I'm going to figure out like what I've learned before, what skill sets I've had prior, how I'm going to deploy them into real estate. And then I'm going to pay attention to the people I need to be around that fit what I'm looking to do, in making sure that I do it the right way. Right. So one of the biggest lessons was that, like, whether you're new to real estate, new to video, new to buyer presentations, there's things going on with NAR and you're wanting to learn how to pivot. Oh, that's okay. What's not okay is you continuing to be complacent and placing yourself, in places that just aren't the best fit, that aren't necessarily bringing value to you, yet you still having the expectation that somehow you're going to get better or come out of something on top. You're just not. The circle matters most. And being new, you're such a blank canvas, right? So that was one of the biggest lessons.
I want to add on to that because two things. I think that unlearning is super important. When I realized how hard it is to unlearn things, to break old habits, was when I was trying to figure out my relationship with money. And I was going down the path of like, why do I have these feelings about money? Because I was making all this money and then I was self-sabotaging it, right? And figuring out why. And I realized that I have to unlearn things. All of these lessons that I thought were true when I was growing up and what I learned, they were actually not. They were the polar opposite of what I was supposed to be believing and doing. And I had to unlearn those lessons. Sometimes it's harder to unlearn them than it is hard to learn them.
You know what Conor McGregor says about money?
What?
Conor McGregor says, I have an unhealthy relationship with spending money, but I have a healthy relationship with making
it.
I saw that and I rationalized it so much. I go, oh, that's me. He does it. I do it. And it's like, no. You're not Conor McGregor. You didn't sell a company for $100 million. But it's
not yet.
Right. But it's interesting how you'll rationalize things or try to make sense of it versus just, hey, get back to fundamentals and how we need to do it, and understanding yourself and who you are at your core, not your mind's mind of what you think you are, what you want to be, and how you're behaving. At your core, what you know to be appropriate.
Yeah. And then to add on to that, the biggest reason to my success is copying successful people. I tell people all the time, like, I'm the world best copycat, right? If I get an idea of something that I want to do, I go and study the people who've been there, done that, and I copy step by step and implement it into my life. So it sounds like when you were learning to shoot, you learned from the best. You didn't have
Yep.
things to unlearn, and you became the best. So I love that. Any other lessons? I'm sure you have plenty that you learned from Marine Corps.
Oh man. Yeah, and I like the vulnerable ones. Like I remember not knowing how to swim, and that's not fun. Like my sister threw me in a pool when I was 5 years old at my grandma's community pool house, right? It freaked me out. She had to jump in and save my butt after throwing me in it. So I don't have some romantic story about why I don't know how to swim. I just got scared as a kid and I avoided it. So I finally had to face it once I went to boot camp. And you're on this platform 15 or 20 feet in the air. And while you're up there, like, hey, anybody that doesn't know how to swim, raise your hand. And I'm like, oh, heck no. And they already know. They're like, raise your effing hands, because when you get down there, drill instructors are going to try to help you tread water and not let you die. So you're like, oh, God, okay. I don't know swim. So I jump off when it's my turn. And instead of trying to tread water and let somebody come help me, the second I come up to the surface, I go the opposite direction, away from my drill instructors, away from this area, my little doggy paddle. And all I heard was one of my drill instructors, Grimes, you mother effer. Yeah, and I swear he walked on water because somehow he beat me to the side. Or maybe I'm just so slow at swimming, right? Like he had time to eat a sandwich and walk around and I still wasn't there. But they get there and I remember like they're slamming me into the water, right, while they're trying to tell me to calm down. And like on the surface, like that makes no sense. It's like, how would you ever expect somebody to calm down while you're literally like slamming them into the water? And it's like, well, yeah, there is no reasonable thought. It's like I had to force myself to try to do that and to just like overcome the culture shock and just what they were doing. I had to force, like he was literally pulling this crap out of me, almost like an intervention, right? Like just, but as I calmed down, they let up. And as I calmed down more, they let up. And as I calmed down even more, they let up. And then they started teaching me how to float on my back. And I sucked at it. Then they tried to teach me how to tread water. I sucked at it. So for the next 2 weeks, I was on the side of the pool learning how to flutter kick and how my body's supposed to work in the water when you tread water, right? So the lesson in it though is like for 2 weeks, I'm laying on my back on the side of the pool like a little kid with the other idiots that don't know how to swim, learning how to move my hands, and my feet on laying on the side of the pool like a knucklehead. And when I finally got back in the pool to start testing out, I qualified at swim qual 4, which is the lowest qualification possible. And I think because the war was in the desert and they knew we didn't need to swim right away, they probably threw me a bone and still kind of like let me have swim qual 4 maybe a little bit more politely than they needed to. The lesson in it is knowing how hard you can work at something and get this much. That's the reality. Right? So you come into real estate, you come in entrepreneurship, like I've already had this expectation, one, of how far I can take something and how accomplished I can get with the work, but I don't have a false sense of how quickly it's supposed to come. I remember flutter kicking until my hip flexors wanted to fall off, and still barely qualifying. Like I was doing this much crap and we were at the pool all day, and drill instructors they don't play around. When you're at the pool, for hours, you're practicing these stupid strokes. Like I wasn't just sitting there on my cell phone practicing for 15 minutes.
Watching it on YouTube.
Yeah, you're doing it for hours. But I got this much. I barely qualified at swim qual 4. So it's like such an important lesson of understanding your commitment to how hard you're going to work, but then having the accurate expectation that you're going to get this much. You're going to work this much and you're going to get this. However, the better you get, the quicker the result starts to come once you start hitting a certain level of proficiency. But so many people quit just before they get to swim qual 4. Once I got to swim qual 4, my ability to swim better became a lot more rapid. But you got to hit a certain level of proficiency to even like get traction or conceptually understand something at just a very beginner level. Once you're there, though, if you keep the work up, the result does come quicker. So many people quit before they hit the entry level standard where things actually start to come alive. Right. I learned that because I didn't have a choice. Like, you
Yeah.
don't just get to go, hey, Mr. Drill Instructor, I'm just gonna go get lunch. Is that cool? I'm just gonna quit boot camp. I ain't quitting boot camp. I'm not going home telling my Marine dad he can do it and I can't. I'm not gonna want to be a part of something and challenge myself and walk away from it like I did baseball. I had enough in me. I was like, you're gonna have
Get
to kick me
paid.
out of here.
Yeah.
And it
I
broke.
learned it. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, they break you. They take you past your own limit by not giving you an option but to be there. But then all of a sudden, when you break through your own limit and you get to that first level where things are starting to come together, you have the aha moment, right? But we need people around us to bring us past our own level of perception to then feel that, to then go, oh, like, man, I get it. So just in boot camp alone, maybe not directly in those moments, but as my career in the Marine Corps continued and as other careers past the Marine Corps continued, it was like so serving for work ethic and expectation.
My boot camp was Tony Robbins. I go there every year. I go to UPW, which is Unleash the Power Within, because he speaks the language how I need to hear it, right? And every time I go back, I feel like he breaks me down, he builds me up, and I'm ready to tackle the world when I walk out of there. But I wanted to add on to what the way I learned this one is Muhammad Ali. He was asked of how many sit-ups he does, and he goes, "I don't start counting until they start hurting."
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you have to learn to take the punches. I mean, real estate and any industry, I feel like entrepreneurship, when you are on your own, there's so much you have to learn. There's so much you have to learn about yourself and your abilities and your dreams and the systems and it's going to take and the people that it's going to take to get to the end and, realize your goal. But I do feel like when you were describing the swimming and they're pushing you down, they're coming up for air, they're pushing you down, you're coming up for air, right? I feel like that's exactly what entrepreneurship is. Like you just take the punches every time and you just come up for air, you're like, you're good to go for another 5 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like eventually when that confidence comes, you're like, okay, try to push me down, watch what happens, right?
Yeah.
And then
Well, and you keep building upon, like you keep building different lanes of income. I think, myself and my business partner, Eli, we've got 7 different lanes of income, and they're all real estate related, but between coaching and courses and rev share and personal production and like there's just investment properties. They didn't come overnight. They came one at a time, but they came because we were improving ourselves due to adapting to a market, adapting to a circumstance, feeding a better skill set. You just start to grow into different situations. And like your entrepreneurship, it's no different than building a house. Like imagine if we were all living in like the wild, wild west, right? And you're building a house and a storm comes and blows it over. Okay, you're going to have to, you build it better next time and you fortify it and you protect it from wildlife or storms and like things just continue to get better and you add things to it. Like it's no different. I think sometimes people's lens of how they're looking at real estate or entrepreneurship, it's like, guys, it's a path and it's a journey of self-growth and nothing more.
I always say entrepreneurship, it's a spiritual game.
But you have to remember that. If you're just in it for the sale or if you're treating it like a job and you're not seeing it the way you should see it from the gate, well, then every expectation you're setting from there is wrong. Right. And then like, think about that. If you're this far off over time, like if we're this far off over time, what happens?
Mm-hmm.
By the
A
time it
1%.
gets down to the target, you're 6 feet off the darn target. But it started by just being this far off.
Yeah.
So this is, and the blessing about entrepreneurship or real estate is you can start over right now. You can reassess your thought process, reground yourself, and just reestablish an appropriate mindset right now, moving forward, regardless of how long you've been in. Like that's the freedom that you have is like, do whatever you want, change whatever you want. Your perspective can be different right now, which then starts a different path for you.
Yeah, you get to create it. 1% change a day is a 365% change in a year.
Crazy.
You don't even feel it. As you're going through the 1%, you don't even feel it, right? You just wake up half an hour earlier, you get half an hour more work done. Like you read a book where you never read a book before, right? Like those little changes, 1% at a time will add up to 365%. And it will absolutely change your life. So what happened after Marine Corps? How long you were in it?
Yep. So between Marine Corps and government work, I did police work for 5 years here back in my hometown, about 16 years altogether.
And then you decided to get this great idea to get a real estate license.
Yeah, just that. So when I was in police work, I remember, long story short on that was, I was a Medal of Honor recipient. They call it the Guardian Angel Award. I got it from our local fire department for a call that I was on. I had some life-saving awards. I was doing a great job. But the camaraderie from my experience wasn't the same. And there was a couple things that just felt a little bit more political and just a bureaucracy. Like, I didn't mind criminals. I expect criminals to like hate me or tell me certain, like, I didn't mind that. It just didn't feel the same as the Marine Corps. It felt like we all have corporate jobs. We just happen to carry guns and drive cars around. And the problem was I had this predetermined expectation of what I thought police work was going to be based off of my brotherhood experience as a Marine. And there was a lot of it that was there, but there's also a lot that wasn't. I also think internally I was just done running and gunning, and I was talking to my dad about it one day, complaining about some guys that just weren't very tactical. They were a little unsafe on some calls, and I'm talking about it. And I remember coming back like a week later, complaining about something. And he's like, "Look, dude, you're not changing that world. That world is what it is. So understand it. You see the promotion ahead of you. You see detective. You see captains. Like, you see what that looks like. You see what the job looks like. You see what the position looks like, and you see the diplomatic game that everyone's going to adhere to get in where they fit in. So get in where you fit in, or grab your balls and go do something else." And it was like, yeah, right. So I'm single. I've got no kids. I think I'm 30, 31 at the time. And it was like, okay, there's a window right now, because the longer I stay, if I don't want to stay, you're going to get married at some point. You're going to have kids. You're going to have a mortgage. You're going to have, tuition. There's only going to be more things that potentially tie you down, and your ability or freedom to go make a change gets harder and harder the more established you get with the family, the more rooted you get. And it's not that people can't make that change. It's just harder,
Harder. Yeah.
right? Well, I was single, no kids. And I had a buddy, Kurt, who had a fitness company, like a supplement store, like GNC's, but they were called Fit Republic. And he was doing some other cool stuff with it. He had just gotten it licensed to be franchised. And I was always going and buy my supplements from him before I'd go to the gym. We'd always talk about fitness. And fitness for me was always mental. It was never about the six pack. It was about just mentally decompressing and what it served. And I started talking to him about potentially leaving the police department. And he's like, "Dude, you ever thought of being here?" He's like, "I want to grow this. I just franchised it. I'm at 2 stores. I'd love to grow it." So long story short, I was number 2 in that company. And we went from 2 to 14 stores in 2 years, crushing it. And then I remember not complaining, but just kind of talking about some of the long days we were putting in. And my significant other, her father, he sold his company to Hewlett Packard, a tech company. So real entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And she's got a great relationship with her father. She's got some entrepreneurial to her. And as I was saying it, she's like, "Will you ever wonder, like, if you put 16 hours a day into your own thing, like what that would look like?" And I said, "No, I haven't. Like, I've always done really well within a system. I've never thought to create the system. I've always done great within the framework of, military or police work or this fitness company. Like, I can take a sponge and squeeze the crap out of it and perform." I had just never thought of, well, what is there much difference, but like creating your own framework and then squeezing that sponge? I had another buddy who had just gotten into real estate about 6 months before me, and he was crushing. And he was also in sales. He throws events, fitness events, large 10,000 people events, and I'd helped him with some sales on that. And so I mentioned what my significant other said to him as I was helping him with one of his fitness events, and he's like, "Bro, you would be so dangerous in this world." And the key point to this, though, is when Kate mentioned real estate, she's like, "I think you'd be great at that." And when my buddy mentioned it, I didn't have an ego, nothing. Status didn't matter to me. Title of, I need to be a CEO, I need to, or status of going broke again, because like those things didn't matter to me. When they started talking real estate, I was just thinking about what skill sets do I have? What tools do I have that would be applicable to being good tools in real estate? Managing clients' emotions, predicting what's going to happen in the future, creating systems and process to prevent certain things, prepping people for what's ahead. Like, I was great at all those things. And it was like, yeah. And versus me seeing real estate as being a soccer mom and like, oh, who the hell,
Yeah.
like, oh, a Marine's going to go be a soccer mom? That's your problem. People like that get in their own way. I saw the skill set I was like, yeah, you're right. So I got super excited. But then, so I leave Fit Republic. He gives me a little severance pay on my way out. Did me a solid, gave me a couple grand. But then we had to go to some wedding in San Diego for Kate's family. Oh, and then I had 2 cars and an apartment. Dumb shit. And I went from 10 grand to 36 bucks, like real quick. So this exciting entrepreneurial, I'm going to go do this, got very unromantic very quick. So thank God my apartment lease was up that month anyway. I didn't renew. I sold my cars off and I slept in my buddy's mom's pantry, her food pantry downstairs with a little twin mattress next to Fig Newtons and distilled water. And I always tell people, if you're an emotional eater, don't sleep in the pantry like during transition. I swear she would always laugh because she's like, I hear you snacking in there like a little mouse eating all the Fig Newtons, right? Like, but I wasn't afraid to start over, man. Like I've been new before. And I wasn't
Yeah.
afraid to like strip myself of nothing. The Marine Corps did that to me. The Marine Corps strips you of everything and builds you so as long as you got you're good. So getting rid of cars, getting rid of apartments, getting rid of status, none of that mattered. I'm in a pantry, but I got me. And I've been here before. So I embrace this fire, right? Things are forged in heat. I'm good with this, right? And I'd wake up, I'd work out to get my mind right. I'd study all day. I'd go do Uber and Lyft at night to make a couple bucks, rinse and repeat, right? And then from there, I applied, some of my skill sets and put myself around the right people. I did 34, 35 deals my first year, while about halfway through the year, growing a team with my buddy. We hit top 1% in the world for Berkshire.
I'm sorry. Did you mention that you did 30 some transaction your first year and built a team?
Yeah, so I did 35 transactions myself in addition to building a team that hit top 1%. And we didn't even start the team until halfway through the year.
That's crazy. By the way, I'm just saying this out loud for everyone who doesn't know. The chances that a brand new agent is going to build a team in their first year or even do 34 transactions is slim to none. I would say it's top 1% for sure, the top of the top 1%.
And what was great was like I'd been a leader for a long time. I had 16 years of leadership, and we weren't doing Zillow. We weren't doing Realtor.com. I was teaching agents how to serve, how to create client experience, how to get in front of people. We did a lot of video for that fitness company, Fit Republic. We were throwing events. We were doing video. We were doing social media a certain way. I took what I learned there and I just became an industry disruptor. Nobody was doing video like we were doing video, but I came from the fitness world where it was a big deal. And we knew how to do it. All of a sudden I come over here where no one's doing it. And it was a big industry disruptor, right? So I was able to use that tool and then teach others. Second year, we were top 0.5 or top 0.1%. And this is where we started after that. Like this is where we got into YouTube, and it grew from there as far as our platforms, what we were doing. Obviously now we're at EXP. We do a couple $100 million in volume. We've got a YouTube channel that makes over 7 figures a year. We've got a couple hundred in our downline, our what I call our 7 levels of leadership so far. And it's just stacking bricks though, right? Like we didn't do it all overnight. It was literally just stacking bricks of just one thing at a time. But over time, that momentum really just starts to build. And it was my experience before real estate that at least let me understand process. So I'm new to real estate, but I'm not new to being new. I'm not new to structure. I'm not new to leadership. I'm not new to consistency. And I'm not new to expectation of process and how things grow, right? And like my culminating piece to that is like, do you know how many moms watch this or are gonna watch this? And it's like, hey, you're tempered, you're organized, you're staying on top of kids so they don't light the house on fire. You're consistent with things. You have great follow-up with schools, making sure that things are going appropriate with schools. Why are you not seeing that skill set and applying it to real estate? So many times, we don't see ourselves for who we are. And it's like, listen, man, make real estate fit you. Don't fit real estate. You make real estate fit you. What are you great at? And who are you? And how can we use that to become better? So when I was doing video, I'm not going to go to real estate and fit in and get in line and make money in 10 years, maybe. I'm going to figure out what makes me great. And then I'm going to make real estate fit me.
Fit that. That's exactly what I did when I got into it, right? I interviewed all the top producers in the office at Real Estate One, and they were buying Zillow leads, and they were farming an area, and they were door knocking, and they were, and I was like cold calling, and I was like, I'm not doing any of that. I'm like, they're all against my core being. I like to joke and say it's against my religion to do all of those, and Zillow I couldn't afford, but it was against my religion. So then I decided, okay, what am I good at? what does come easy to me? What can I afford? And it was social media. And where are the strangers? Because I didn't know anyone, right? So I got into it with the same idea of like, I'm the sorest loser you ever meet. So if I'm doing something, I'm going to be on top of the list, or I'm not doing it. I've never half-assed anything in my life, right? So when I got into it with the idea that I am going to be the top 1%er, or I'm not doing this, right? And then what am I willing to do? Because after researching what it actually takes to be a top producer, I realized all of the things that I'm not willing to do. And then it narrowed it down. It's social media for me, right? And that's how I did it. I got real estate to fit my social media box, not the other way around. Even though I had
100%.
plenty of people telling me it's never going to work without cold calling and door knocking and buying Zillow leads. And I said, watch me. I'll do
Yeah.
it twice. I'll take photos and I'll post it.
100%. 100%.
Right. That's so,
100%.
but this is exactly why I'm doing this show, because I'm a huge believer that mindset and life lessons is what gets you to where you're at. Right. Because if you don't have your mindset right, doesn't matter what opportunity is in front of you, you're not going to take action. And then also, every lesson that you learned along the way formed you who you are today. But sometimes these lessons that we personally go through, they hurt. Right. And so, what I'm trying to get through this show is to help people learn the lessons through other people's mistakes and other people's life lessons, so they don't have to go through it to learn the same lesson. So many of them I get to learn through interviewing others and to going to these events, through reading books and biographies. And it's just, let's just say, it's much easier when it doesn't hurt as bad. You can learn, and you can learn it from other people. So your real estate career has been amazing, but you did it and you're doing it. It's a little different, right, than everybody else. So let's talk a little bit about YouTube. How did YouTube come about, and how come you guys are so successful at it? What's the secret
Resourcing, yeah.
sauce?
So again, right, resourcing in circles. We had a podcast at the time. We had just started our podcast. We had maybe had it for about 6 months, and we were on a pretty large podcast in San Francisco. Flew out there, did it in person, came back. And every time I'm on podcasts, I appreciate people for having me on. And I always ask them, like, hey, if there's anybody that's a good fit for our podcast, in addition to yourself, we're open-minded. And a gentleman introduced us to our buddies now, Jesse and Jackson, who were really the pioneers of the living in concept as far as like YouTube. There's a lady prior to them. She just wasn't quite doing it at scale, and Jackson, who came from a marketing background, like really started engineering, that concept. And well, he's an interesting guy. So we had him on our podcast. We're great at social media. He's great at YouTube. As he's talking about it, I'm a student of the game on my own darn podcast, listening to it. We get off the podcast, and Eli and I were both, my business partner, Eli, we were like, hey man, that just sounds intriguing. And he goes, guys, the way you crush social media, like there's a lot more work to this, but it's a beast, it's a monster, and there's not really anybody doing it. Like, this would be a great fit for you guys. And we just kept the conversation moving. We kept learning from them. And, they were at EXP. Not one conversation about EXP, conversation about humans conglomerating. Like, stop talking to me about recruiting when I get more recruiting from Keller Williams than anybody. Like, stop talking to me about that. But the point is, I don't worry about status. I don't worry about image. I don't worry about who's going to think what. I know I'm a good person, and I'm doing all I can to be a good person. I had no stigma about where I should hang my license. I had every thought toward, who am I around? Who are the people I'm around that are going to directly affect me, and how can I add value to them? Long story short, we teamed up with Jesse and Jackson, and we're a part of their 7 levels of leadership. And we made $800,000 our first year of running YouTube, and spent 7 figures plus every year, so on and so forth, including last year, which was a slower year than the 2008 housing crash, a slower year transactionally in the country in 2008, yet we still did that many transactions, right? It's always been people, and it's always been not being afraid to make a change because I'm worried about my own comfort and where I'm at, or if somebody's gonna be bummed if I leave. It's always been about creating the circle and putting myself around the right people. And we've teamed up with them, and then it's just a networking. It's networking, putting yourself. So we didn't have the idea. Other guys that were crushing in that space, we helped them with what we were great at. They helped us with what they were great at, and we teamed up, and we've never looked back. But it's,
That's
again,
awesome.
it falls back to the people, but everyone knows that, in my opinion, right? It's like, but people get so fearful of just making the decision, like changing your brokerage is like, it's like Armageddon, or you're going to affect world peace or something. Like, people make it such a big deal. Like, you're in your way so bad. Now, and I will say that there is certain models in real estate where it's just beneficial, because if you don't grow, I don't grow. And there are certain models that really encourage that. And EXP is one of them. We've been here for 3.5 years, and it's been amazing.
For me, change, I'm the opposite. Most people are afraid of change. I'm afraid of staying the same. So I embrace change. I love, the last thing I want to do is be in the same place next year than I am right now. Right. Like plus in my mind, you cannot fight change. Change is inevitable. You are the oldest today, or I should say the youngest and the oldest right now, if we pass away, right? But you're the youngest you'll ever be.
Yep.
Getting older is inevitable if God gives you a life, right? Your skin is not the same. Literally, all the cells in your body change within 90 days. Your taste buds change, right? Like we are literally not the same human. If you think about, am I the same Cochise Joinvier as I was raised and today Gogo Betki, right? Am I the same person based on DNA? Yes, I am. Am I the same person for your fingerprint? Yeah, yes, I am. But am I the
That's how
same
you
person?
articulate it. I think of like
Yes.
quiet despair. How many people live in quiet despair, knowing there's more in the tank, knowing they could do more, knowing they could be more, knowing they've sat on the bench and only gone half in on life, like I did with baseball, but they're not making that decision. And like for me, I'm like, hey man, just do some cowboy shit. Like we're here for a certain amount of time. Like what? Like really, if you're working hard and doing your like, what's the worst that could happen? You go
Yeah.
back to where you came from, and they're happy to take. Like, just go do some cowboy shit, man. Just like go take some risk and live life, and like wake up and have to breathe a little bit because like you're actually like attacking something that makes you feel alive. For me, it's
Yeah.
that right. Like when there's opportunity, first and foremost, you're not going to get to 100% before you make a decision. You might get to 70 or 80% on a decision. The rest of that gap will never come. It only comes through actually execution. So if this were football, you can watch all the game film you want, you can practice all you want, and you can get to about 80% that you think you've got the game figured out. The only answer to close the gap in the rest of that 20% is Sunday. You got to wake up and actually play the game to close the gap on being, hey, 100%. Are you 100% that you won? No, we lost. We got our ass kicked, right? Like, and then you learn, or yeah, we won. But people expect to get 100% before they move into something. And again, it's your expectation of what you think something's supposed to be. You might get to 80. Typically, you're 60, 70, and you're leaning on that side of the fence. And like, all right, pull the trigger, go put the work in to get the remainder of the information you need through
Yeah.
process to actually confirm whether you want to continue to do that or not.
Oh gosh, I learn every game while I'm playing. Like even when we sit down with friends and they're teaching me a new card game or something, I'm like, don't teach me. I don't learn that way. Just put me in the game. Let's start playing, and then I learn the game, right? But I want to add on to the earlier conversation of kind of living life, right? I was watching a show from Dr. Wayne Dyer. Do you know who he is?
Yeah,
Dr. Wayne Dyer, yeah. And in one of his shows, he said some people live for 90 years and some people live 1 year 90 times.
100%. I say
And that
that in
was
real estate. How many
eye-opening.
times when I was new in real estate, I'd have a listing agent or somebody tell me like, "Oh, I've been doing this for 16 years." No, you haven't. You've done 1 year 16 times. Don't come here and bullshit me about the BS you're trying to pull. Like, no. And it's really just a great concept on how to look at it based off of evolution. What's the evolution of your entrepreneur career? What's the evolution of your real estate career? And you have to self-initiate it, okay? Because this is not corporate America. Nobody's giving you a promotion. Nobody's giving you a raise. You can come to real estate, you can start as a realtor, and you can leave as a realtor. In corporate America, you'll get a pay raise after a year or two, or they'll make you a manager or a position lead. You know, they'll give you promotions, right? Well, in entrepreneurship, even in the military, they give you promotions based off your good work. In entrepreneurship, it's self-initiated. You have to create your promotion, you have to create your future, and you really got to look at every year as evolution of what's next. And there's some hard things to that. It's also very liberating that you are in control of your future, right? But you have to see it for what it is.
Oh, for sure. So we are getting to the end of the show, and I have a million questions for you. So let's fly through them one by one super quick. Let's see how far we get. What was
Yep.
one of the biggest lessons that you learned, but it took you the longest to learn it? So what I mean by that, I like to joke and say that God will throw you pebbles, and if you don't listen, he's going to throw a brick, right? What is that lesson that it just like you had to learn it a couple of times until you really got it?
Just being tempered, like time teaches people. And as a leader, a lot of times I would already know the answer to something because I had been through it before. And I would try to convince and have so much conviction telling somebody something to try to prevent that, not understanding that sometimes time just needs to take its course. And it's not about being right. It's about being supportive and letting people walk down their own path, even if they're going to make some of the mistakes you did. Sometimes it's more so about their experience. Sometimes it's more so about their freedom and ability to make that decision versus you trying to protect so much. And then you get into the whole theory of like, man, if you do that, you're just creating robots. Like, even when you're right, it's like, it's not about right or wrong. It's about understanding, influence, and support. And some people just got to go. So like over these past couple years, I've just gotten a lot better at being poised and being tempered and having just having that ability to give to others versus trying to convince them of what the crap I already know. It's like, that's such a like entry level way to lead versus the experience that they're going through. And it's interesting, right? Because even though I was great at that in the Marine Corps and as a cop, when you get to a new industry, you kind of lose the sharpness of some of your skills because you're in a brand new environment.
Yeah.
You just are, you know what I mean? Like, you have a baby and all of a sudden you don't know how to wipe a butt. You've been wiping your own butt for how long? All of a sudden you got a baby, you don't know how to wipe a butt? No, I don't know how to do it. I'm freaking out. What the heck, man?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, some of the life lessons, as much as I want to teach and save my team from it, right? Not having to go through the same mistakes that I did. Sometimes they just have to go through it. I always think of my children in a heartache, right? Like, no matter how much I would explain to my child how much a heartache hurts, right? Like a breakup and things like that, they're gonna have to go through it. That's the only way.
They'll never have the contextual experience if you take it from them.
Unless no.
So it's more so that. So just evolving as a leader and just giving more temperance for sure.
Next question. What is your most important habit that formed you who you are?
Humor.
So you can laugh through the pain.
My mom was one of the funniest people ever. I'm hard on myself. I'm critical of myself. I will not forget how to have a good time. I will not forget how to give myself grace.
You see, I have to have amazing friends
just
for that.
Knowing how hard you're trying. It's like, when you know inside you're doing a good job or you're not, you know whether you're working as hard as you should or you're not, or you're being proficient. And, you know, sometimes we can just get so critical in this space, which is good. But at the same time, you know, like, for example, there's so much dark humor as a police officer. There's so much dark humor as Marines. You'd be on the side of a mountain, you haven't eaten in 3 days and whatever, but you find a way to laugh with your buddies, man. And you find a way to like live through it. And it's always been, from my perspective, it's always been rooted in humor. And just being able to get that laugh, right? So as hardcore as I want to be with entrepreneurship, it's like, I'm going to live, I'm going to laugh, I'm going to have that beer or that glass of wine. You know, when I come down and see you and your husband, or you guys come here, we're all working hard. But when you came to my birthday dinner, it was in the middle of EXPCon and everyone's got their hustle going. But for an hour, we all got slightly tipsy and just had a lot of fun and just a human experience. We can't forget to have that. The way I remember it and the habit that I have that keeps me there is humor.
Humor. I love it. What is success?
Individual. It's whatever someone interprets it as.
Yeah. So what is it for you?
Being relevant and influence.
Who inspires you?
My mom.
Oh, 10-10. You want to tell them? No, it's 10:53 now, but every time I see 10-10, I think of your mom, even though I never met her. Should we share that story super quick?
Yeah. You know, like, you know, my mom passed away or whatnot, but you know, what I love about my mom is how strong she was, even just like supporting me going to the Marine Corps, not saying anything. Then I come home and we had this talk after I stopped being a cop. We were at our cabin in the mountains playing dominoes with my cousins, and I'm like drinking a beer and she starts crying. And I'm like, are you okay? She's just like my baby having a beer. And I'm like, what's wrong? You know? And she's like, Will, you just went to go do this Marine Corps thing and it's badass and cool. And, you know, and then I finally get you home after being, you know, in the Marine Corps during that time and just being afraid, but supporting you. Then I finally get you home, but then you're just doing the same thing here at home as a cop. You know, I'm still scared for you. And she's like, you know, so I leave police work and I'm at this fitness company now, and we're at the cabin hanging out with my cousins, and we're all laughing, and I'm pretty witty. I'm gonna talk a little trash to you. I'm competitive. And she was crying because she's like, I feel like I got Will back. And she's like, it's not that this Marine isn't Will, but she's like, there's an other part of you that was the athlete and funny and whatever. And I feel like I got him back. And I feel like nowadays I've done a great job at combining both versions of Will into a complete man. But what's great is like how powerful and strong she was. So when I'm on stage and I'm tattooed and I'm muscular and everyone thinks I'm so strong because of my mother, not because not because I'm a hero, but because of overcoming insecurities and just different things. And my biggest thing with my mom being that is I feel like when I'm on stage, I get to give my mom a voice. But
Oh,
then in addition to that, how many women are in the audience? How many moms are in the audience that I'm also giving a voice to? And it's just important to say that because like that's my truth. That's where my strength comes from. That's where my support has come from. And it's just my truth. But it feels great to be able to give other moms a voice through a son raised by a mom, right? Like it's important for me, right? So that's
well,
that's
I have
definitely
two of them. Hopefully, I'm doing a good job too.
they better. They better.
We'll find out one day, right? What's a
100%.
mantra or motto that guides you or in business or life? Do you have any?
Yeah, I do have one. I think I put it on my Facebook or my Instagram at one point, but you know, who cares what you've done if you're not helping others with it?
Yeah.
I'm just mildly interested in how successful you are if you can't find a way to help other people. Right. And I think that's just important in today's time. I think it's important within coaching and leadership and the charlatans that may be or the things that can be self-absorbed. It's like, I just don't care. I'm interested in what you're great at if you're finding a way to influence others and you're finding a way to be relevant in a space. So who cares what you've done if you're not finding a way to help others with it?
One of my favorite quotes is that you can have absolutely anything in life, the more people you have to get what they want.
It's true. And gifts are supposed to go through you, not to you. Right?
Yeah.
If you're blessed from God, if you're given a gift and you have influence or the ability to do something, you're going to reap some benefit from that because that shows proof of concept and people see how you live or what you're doing. And that's great. You just have to understand that just because you've been given that doesn't mean it stops here. It's got to go through you and you have to continue influence. And it's something else that just makes me feel the best about what I'm doing as a leader.
Yeah, I learned it. I heard it from Denzel Washington in one of his speeches. He said, each one teach one.
Learn, do, teach, man. It's important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if we were to live with you, like the outside world doesn't get to know the real world, right? So is there any quirks or anything that makes you a little bit unique, unconventional, but only someone who lives it, you would know that? What would that
I
be?
sleep really good. My business partner had to learn that. He put me on a whoop one time to measure my sleep, and because he was like measuring his sleep, and so we were measuring my sleep, and he's like, "Dude, your REM sleep is like 136% better than mine." And the whole reason I was okay to put it on was because for some reason I talked myself into having sleep apnea, even though it wasn't even close to true, and I wasn't showing any symptoms of it being true. I just had to see. But long story short, we're at an event and we're sharing a hotel room because we typically give ourselves our own rooms, but it was booked, so we're sharing rooms. And he's in his bed, I'm in my bed, and he's like, "Hey, do you mind if I put on some white noise to sleep?" I go, "Yeah, no problem, man. Do you mind if I turn my phone on a little bit?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem." He starts kind of falling asleep, and he hears my phone, and it's Cat Williams. And he's like, "What the heck?" And the quirk about me is a lot of times I will fall asleep to comedy. I literally,
Really?
I literally giggle myself to sleep. Yeah. It's
I love it.
I love comedy. It kind of like lets me just turn my brain off. We're
Yeah.
working so hard, we're doing whatever. I'll turn on some comedy and I'll just laugh and it kind of turns my brain off, which lets me detach and then fall asleep. And it works for him. He had to put on some earplugs. Apparently he was too engaged with the humor. I don't know, but the
So
quirk about
my
me is yeah, I fall asleep to comedy.
Oh, I love it. So my last question to you, and then we have to call this an episode. Thank you so much for being here today.
100%.
Is I last time I FaceTimed you, you were reading a book. So what book is maybe life changing, or is your favorite book, or you would
Oh,
recommend to the next entrepreneur that they must read?
like I'm an advocate of like Jocko Willink, and like all of his leadership books, Extreme Ownership, The Dichotomy of Leadership. If you guys want to just know what I'm reading personally right now, I'll grab that. This is Phil Jackson. This is 11 Rings. So Phil Jackson was the head coach for Michael Jordan with the Bulls when he won 6 championships. He was also the coach for Kobe Bryant when they won 5. And
Wow.
I love what he does in his book and how he explains leadership and influence and how he chooses to coach people. And you coach people fairly. You don't coach them the same. You coach them fairly, but people just need different things. So that's an interesting book. I'm not so much a tactician. I love reading about people and then pulling their qualities out. It kind of makes a book a journey and you're excited
Yeah.
to read more. I don't need a tactic book very, very often. It's more so humans. And then I've got this book right here that's right next to it. Everybody knows the Bible. But what I will say about this Quest Study Bible is inside of it, you've got scripture, but then this one's provided with notes. So this Bible explains what you're actually reading. Because for me, I can't read the Old Testament, the New Testament, and really pull or understand a lot of it. It's so hard sometimes. But these notes that come with it, like these cliff notes on the side of each page, I'll read, and then I'll read the cliff notes, and it just further explains, what the chapter is trying to talk about, and that's always been a great help. So those are the two books I have, and obviously the Bible, it's a constant.
Christmas last year, I told Dwayne, I wanted a Bible, and I think I just found what I want. So thank you so much. Would you send me
Well,
the
now
link?
I got to send it to you. I owe you a gift. Now I
You
can send
can
it to
just send me the link, and I'll, get it. Thank you so
you.
much for being here.
100%.
Thank
I
you.
know we went long. That was my challenge today. I was like, she thinks her and I are going to talk for 45 minutes.
But I know.
Boy,
But
is
I
she
think
wrong.
we got some really good things. Maybe we can have you back again.
100%. Anytime you need me,
Thank
I am
you.
there. I can't thank you enough for your support. Anybody watching this, if you're considering Gogo, or if you haven't teamed up with her or had a conversation, I suggest that you do.
Thank you so much. And the best way to find your team, would you please put Will's information on the screen, is at Will_Grimes or WillGrimes.com.
There you go.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Will. Bye, Will.
Good to see you.
Ready to elevate your mindset? Now it's time for What Would Gogo Do?
Okay, so today's question is from John Bukur. He's actually Romanian. I know him in person. He's from Canada, if I remember correctly. You can find him on John Realtor Nanaimo, if I'm pronouncing it right. And his question today is, what did you do first after you got your license? What would you tell the young Gogo that has just started in real estate? That's a great question, Don. I know what I would do different. So when I was early in my career, so the one thing that I did do right is that I researched the top producers. So as soon as I got licensed at Real Estate One, I went into the office, I figured out who are the top producers. Mind you, this is back in the day in 2011, where we really in the same office. So I really only researched the people in the office who were the top producers at the time. And I researched all of them, and I figured out what they did and what they did really good and what was the reason to their success. And very quickly, I figured out that they were door knocking, they were cold calling, they were buying Zillow leads, they were farming an area. And that kind of gave me an idea of the things that I want to do or I don't want to do or I can't afford to do. So that's how my social media came about, is then I realized very quickly what I wasn't willing to do, what I wasn't able to do or afford to do, which was like buying leads. And over time, it just became against my being to buy leads from third-party companies. And really, my goal is for everyone to learn how to fish for themselves and how to put food on the table. But what I didn't do well, which I wish what I know today, so with my work ethic and with my hunger for knowledge, I would have joined the team. If I knew then what I know today, I would have joined the team. I would have joined the team right away. I would have been front and central. I would have gone to every listing appointment, every buyer's appointment, every open house. I would have shadowed every agent, every home inspection, anything that they are doing, because I'm a sucker for information, right? And I would just soak it up in like a sponge, right? I would do possibly everything in my power for 6 months to a year. Yes, I would take a 50% pay cut, but the way I look at it, I would get opportunity and would get knowledge and I wouldn't get otherwise. And I would turn that knowledge and opportunity a year later into 100% commission for the rest of my life. So what I would do today is to join a team, to soak up that information as fast as you possibly can, because that will catapult your business and the speed of your business. It took me a very long time. Like in my first year, I think I made $16,000. In my second year, I made 36. In my third year, I made 70 something. So I pretty much doubled every year, but I'd rather double 100,000 in my first year into 200 into 400 and double 16,000 into 36 into 75, right? So I would join a team if I was brand new today to soak up all the information. I would stay on the team for 6 to 12 months until I figured like I got the rhythm of things. And then I would go out on my own. That's what I would do today.
You get paid for the hour what you bring to the hour. Or in other words, the fastest way for you to earn more is by learning more. GoGet'em Webinars is your chance to learn from those who have walked the talk. Gogo invites all of the top performers in the industry to guide you through your success journey. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. The roadmap is already laid out. If you haven't figured out how to make money in your sleep yet, you're not running a business. You're stuck in a job. Join GoGet'em Webinars to learn how to earn passively and have your money doing all the heavy lifting so you don't have to. Explore more at GoGet'emWebinars.com.